always feel so accomplished getting Zoom working.
That actually might go up.
All right. So my name is Heather. A lot of people call me Weasel. And I'm going to talk about code quality strategies. And I'm also short, so I think we can all agree that these are characteristics of quality code. I think if you actually Google it, you're going to find a list pretty similar to this. Unfortunately, nobody actually agrees what any of that looks like in practice. So setting up a code quality strategy is a way to formalize your expectations. Anyone who's written up a style guide in Confluence probably is familiar with the fact that you're going to have one or two people who absolutely love it and zealously try to enforce it. You're going to have another person who disagrees with chunks of it and tries to omit following that. You're going to have, people who agree to change certain parts of it and then never update the documentation. And there's probably going to be some new person at some point who was never told it exists and feels picked on when people tear apart their pull request. So basically, you want to automate how you're enforcing code quality. Unless you really like having conversations about single versus double quotes. So with that in mind, I wanted to cover what types of tools are out there in order to do this. So first category, we have linters. These are one of the older types of tools. They're highly configurable, but they also make you fix violations manually. This makes people find this punitive. A lot of things tend to get overridden. These are an older category of tool. We also have formatters, which are newer. They're less configurable. In fact, you have Black, which absolutely will not let you use single quotes, even if you want to. But they also fix the violations automatically. And so while people might not agree with the decisions these make, they tend to accept it because they don't have to do so much extra work as a result. We have a category tool that tries to manage how maintainable your code is. These are interesting because they more or less try to automatically assign a score as to how much effort it's going to take to maintain the code you've written. Essentially, McCabe tries to measure distinct paths through a particular unit of code. The Halstead metrics measure relationships between the number of operators and operands in order to express things like the level of effort required to maintain something. The biggest selling point for both of these, I mean, it sounds complicated, but they give you a basis to say, no, you can't check in this thing that's 500 lines long with nested ifs without seeming punitive. And finally, we have security scanners. This is actually a really broad topic as far as what these tools do. Some of them check for known unsafe practices. Others check for open CVEs. More so than the other categories, there's a lot of variance in what's available out there. So you need to understand what your tool is doing and configure it. There are some offerings out there that will flag infectious licenses as a security problem. I don't work for Microsoft or any place that's distributing packaged software to consumers, so I don't necessarily find that a problem. Some people do. But if you're providing feedback that's not exactly useful, people are going to ignore it and treat it as noise. So just a thing to be mindful of. At any rate, all of these tools have to actually run in order to provide value. So, and in order to make sure people do it, the mechanism needs to be as simple as possible. So with that, I mean, I would recommend using pre-commit. This is probably one of my favorite tools that I've encountered recently. But it allows you to run a suite of tools with minimal configuration against every pull request that's going up against your code base. So with that, I have a demo of walking through setting up pre-commit for my my handy demo project, Sparkle Pony.
Begin.
Control plus. Oh, maybe it
Not on this machine.
doesn't have focus on that.
Hey.
Is that big enough?
Yes. Yes, buddy.
All right, so this project isn't really all that complicated. We basically have a handy dandy helper to make web requests. So for this, I want to set up rough for formatting and linting for my repo. So for this, I'm going to go to the pre-commit website, and I'm going to go to the list of featured hooks and find the repo for the rough pre-commit hook. So we have a few options here. The first one is just going to run the linter and formatter. The second one is going to auto fix lint violations. And the third one is going to omit Jupyter notebooks from things that are checked. I don't have any Jupyter notebooks in my repo, so I'm going to go with the second one. Helps if I actually set up my virtual environment. So one of the cool things about pre-commit is even if I want to run rough and black and flake8, I don't actually have to add them to my requirements for my project. So the only thing I really have to add is pre-commit. All right, so in that time, I just set up rough for my project.
So when you did pre-commit install, is that, it looks like it's setting up your GitHub for it. Does that mean you need to, you don't have to have a pre-commit anymore because it's installed in Git as a GitHub script, or you still have to have the package installed?
So I have to have the pre-commit package installed. I don't have to have any of the tools installed locally. So I guess the example they use on the website is there's a SCSS checker written in Ruby. And if you want to set that up to run in a Python project, you don't have to have dependencies on gems. So this is one of the things I thought was cool, just that you don't have to have this other tool chain installed locally, but you can still run the tools and benefit from them. Great. So anyway, I had some further reading, some details about some of the background of some of these tools, how some of the things work. Ned Batchelder's write up about the original McCabe script. Show of hands, who here knew that flake8 could actually do McCabe checking? Nice. But yeah, with that, any other questions? Yes.
So when did it install rough? Like during when you just ran it? Like, and also, can you specify the version of rough that it installs so you can pin
Yeah.
your checks?
So, okay, so we specify the version of the hook, and it basically tells, we have the repo where we get the hook from. And so that hook specifies what version of rough is using. And then pre-commit actually downloads and installs the requirements for your hook. It doesn't need to run as root. There are more details about the exact permissions for that on the pre-commit website. But you know, so I don't have rough installed in my virtual environment here. I do have pre-commit, but the other requirements aren't there. So this is where the actual hook is specified.
On the like recipe they created, basically.
Yeah, so we have the command minimum pre-commit version. And then we have the PyProject that specifies the version rough.
Is it possible to use pre-commit the tool without using hooks? Can you just manually use it for the tool and dependency management part?
So there's a command line interface for that. I've never tried it. I would check their site.
So this is running before you hit git commit, right? Is there one that runs before you push or create a PR?
So there's a setting for this to set it up for CI. There are a couple of different settings for this, but the basic usage is just what I just showed. There's also additional options.
I was gonna ask if you played with the other options, because I do push. I hate commit. It's too much for me and it irritates me. So I want to clean everything up basically before it goes upstream. But have you, Heather, have you played with any of the other stuff? I know there's all sorts of hooks, but I've touched 2.
I mean, it supports all the same hooks as Git. So I think the question is if you're looking at one of these, what is it actually specifying that it's doing? Because if it's just running check and you're doing that on push, you'll never be able to advance your CI until you fix something. So I know that I think Twisted's pipeline uses pre-commit with auto formatters, but it just runs it on merge to format anything that people might have checked in that didn't have the checks run at the time.
Is there a way to scope it to just check either the files or the changes that you're working on? Because if you have a giant project and you're not ready to migrate the whole thing over.
Yeah, by default, it only checks the changes in the pull request, or in your commits. So that's really nice.
Yeah. Sorry. Also, I saw those pre-commit recipes or whatever, those configurations stored on this Git hub. Is there a way to reference that somewhere, a local copy or something that's under your control versus configuration that's kind of on the internet?
Yeah, there's an entire section on the pre-commit site about writing your own hooks. So, I mean, you can also your config. Doesn't want to behave now, of course. This is called Why I Don't Like Unity. Anyway, well, what I was going to show is that the pre-commit config file, you can override the command and you can add other options to the hook that you're using, just per project. So if something's running check and you don't want it to, you want it just auto fix, you can just change the command locally.
You kind of fine tune a lot the config for your own projects for each, or kind of once you set one that you like, you kind of just keep using that one.
So you can have as many hooks as you want for your project, and then you can configure the behavior of each. So I guess an example is Flakeade. If you want to change the length of line endings, you can configure that, and you do that in the pre-commit config file. All right. Thanks.